Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Today the JL goes vertical, and we'll get to that right after this. Hey everybody, welcome back and thanks for watching Four Little Rocks. Before we get started today, I'd really appreciate it if you down below click subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out, and I promise you I'm not going to spam your inbox full of junk mail. When I said we were going vertical with the JL, I meant we were going vertical. We've installed the JKS JSPEC 2.5 inch lift kit, larger wheels and tires on the Jeep, and I think the result is outstanding. This was thanks to our friends at Lift Kits for Less in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I will post a link down below and right up here if you want to order this lift kit. My requirements when I bought this lift kit were to try and maintain the on-road driving performance that the JL is famous for, and increase some the ground clearance and a little bit of off-road capability that tackles some tougher trails here in the Southern California area. This new JKS JSPEC lift kit is a full spring-based lift kit. It's not a spring spacer lift kit, so it comes with full springs, 4 new shocks, an adjustable track arm for the front, and all 4 sway bar end links. It's a complete kit. The only thing it doesn't have is the control arms that come with it, but it is expandable in the future where I could put control arms. What it did come with in order to correct the caster on the front end was some small little spacer brackets that have to go on the front lower control arm attachment points, and I'll show you that in the video. What this video is one person's perspective on how this lift kit installation went for him in his garage. If I can do it, you can do it with the right tools and just a little bit of automotive training. This doesn't have to be done for an expensive fee in a shop somewhere. You can do it yourself. If you prefer to have it done in a shop, there are many shops that can help you out also. So let's get right into it. Although the instructions for disassembly begin at the rear of the Jeep, disassembly of the existing suspension on both the front and the rear are quite similar. It all starts with disconnecting the track bar at the axle, lifting the Jeep with a hydraulic jack, removing the vehicles and tires, and then setting the vehicle on jack stands. Now we need to remove the brackets holding the brake lines to the frame with a 10mm wrench, or socket I mean. Once the brake line's out of the way, we'll put the bolt back in place so we don't lose it. The only procedure that differs here at the rear is to move the tire pressure monitoring system from the center of the vehicle to the right side shock tower. There is already a hole available and a nut and bolt are provided. You'll also remove the rear locker cable from the differential to also relieve it from stress. Once that's done, you'll need to remove both sway bar end links from each side of the axle. So it takes a small 8mm socket or nut driver to remove these 3 bolts from this plastic panel so that you can gain access to the upper shock mount. Next, we need to take a little bit of weight off of the axle before we go ahead and remove the shock so that the axle won't fall completely down and bind up the drive shaft. So we'll do that using our hydraulic jack. After you have the shock absorbers removed from each side, you can begin to lower the axle until you have room to remove the springs. Make sure to check the brake lines and any electrical connections for excess stress during this procedure. Then go ahead and remove the springs. To begin assembly of the rear with the new JKS parts, you'll need to note the orientation of the spring bumper, indexing the tab with the opening in the spring tower, and the end of the spring with the spring perch on the bottom of the spring. And then we're going to again raise the axle so that it has some compression on the springs to hold them in place. Now the instructions want us to set these sway bar links to 11 3/4 inches center to center. So we're a little short there. We'll try to open up evenly on both sides. So I would call that 11 3/4 center to center. The nice thing about these is that you can just then match end to end. I'd say that has it. The instructions from JKS say that you might find this sway bar hole to be just a little bit tight, but they advise against drilling it out, and it's probably just a thickness of powder coating in there that's making it a little bit difficult for the sway bar nut to get through. So let's go ahead and just grind a little bit of that away with the handy dandy Dremel, and we'll see if that takes care of the problem. And as you can see, that did take care of it. And the instructions say to install this sway bar link on the outside of the axle hole and the outside of the sway bar with the provided nuts. Then we'll install the bump stop extensions with the provided hardware. Next, we're going to install the shock absorbers. It needs to go in this mount right here. You'll see that it has the bushings already installed on the top of the mount, but you need to kind of walk it up in there until it fits. I walked it up in there. Not quite in the right place yet. And we'll tighten all shock mounts to 60 foot-pounds. And we'll replace the rear dust cover with the 10mm socket. So after you get this whole track bar bracket mocked up and snugged up, the major bolt here on the end that went through the previous hole where the original track bar fit into the place needs to be torqued to 80 foot-pounds. That's a lot of torque. You need a pretty good sized torque wrench to make that happen. There we go. Good and snug. Replace the Jeep's wheels and tires, put the Jeep back on the ground, then insert the bolt into the new track bar location and torque it to 135 foot-pounds. You may need an assistant to push on the passenger side of the Jeep to help the bolt align to the hole. As I stated earlier, the disassembly for the front is very similar to the rear. First, disconnect the track bar from the axle, then raise the Jeep, remove the wheels and tires, and set the Jeep on jack stands. Again, remove the brake line brackets and electrical cables and both sway bar end links. Support the axle and remove both shocks, then lower the axle and remove the springs. The front end assembly begins with inserting a new bump stop spacer and bolt in the new spring, lifting it into place, and securing the bump stop bolt with a self-locking nut from below the spring perch. As with the rear, make sure to orient the spring according to the index on the spring perch. Installing the front shock absorbers is very similar to the way the rear ones went in that you have to walk these two bushings in between the two frame members by rocking the shaft back and forth until you get it in position to line up the bolt and put the bolt home. Pulling the center liner back makes wrenching on the bolt a lot easier. Next, we'll torque that top shock mount to 60 foot-pounds. Now that we've got the shock installed, we'll go ahead and torque that to 60 foot-pounds as well. There we go. Now it's time to set the new sway bar end links 9 inches center to center. And that is right at about 8 inches. So we've got to expand that a bit. and that's 9 inches. And again, just like the rear sway bar links, we'll just match them. And there we have it. Both of them set at 9 inches. Now here you can see that I've mocked up the sway bar connects for the Rubicon specifically, because the Rubicon has the automatic disconnect function. I'm not going to use the quick connects from JKS. Now on the passenger side, it connects just a little bit differently. We'll go ahead and insert our sleeve, bushing, our bolt and washer, and we're going to go ahead and connect this up. On the other side, the bolt and the washer. Now we're going to go ahead and tighten everything down on these sway bar links. Now we're going to adjust the length of the track bar per the instructions to 34 inches. And that's pretty close. And that's right on. Go ahead and snug up the lock nut. Just hand tight and prepare to install it on the Jeep. Now, having completely removed the original track bar from the vehicle, we're going to go ahead and install the JKS adjustable track bar with the non-adjustable end going in the original frame location. And we'll secure it with original hardware. For the caster correcting cam locks installation, I took the Jeep to San Diego Off-Road and Custom in Lakeside, California, as I knew that Mike had a lift, high-speed air power tools, and the right size tools to torque the connecting arms after grinding away the material necessary to make the correction to the caster setting, which had changed when the body and the frame were elevated further above the axle by the lift kit. A member of San Diego Jeep Club's board, Mike is an excellent mechanic and is highly recommended by just about everyone in the club. You can add me to that list now, Mike. After marking and grinding away the material necessary to push the mounting bolts back towards the rear, which effectively lengthens the distance from the axle to the frame mounts for the control arms, the cam locks were test fitted to the mounts, and then the control arms were reattached and torqued to the required 207 foot-pounds. It is this latter torque spec that led me towards professional help, as it could be difficult to generate that kind of torque when you're laying on your back with the Jeep on jack stands.
Yeah, they look good.
After getting your lift kit installed, it's probably a very good idea to check your toe in just to see if anything's changed in the process. You do that by comparing the width of the front against the width of the back, and on brand new tires like these, you'll probably see this mold seam going down the middle, and that's a very good reference point. I've already set to have about a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch toe in on the front, and that's about where it should be. Yours may not need any adjustment. So as you go drive it around for the first time, you're probably going to notice that your steering wheel is doing this number. You're going straight, but it shows that you're turning to the right. And occasionally, a light or a warning in your little center dash display is going to come on to say, service the electronic stability control. And you'll see that the electronic stability warning light is on inside the tachometer display there. And what that's all telling you is that the Jeep thinks you're in a slide. It's going one direction, the steering wheel's pointed another direction, and it doesn't know what to do about that. So what you need to do, because you have lifted the Jeep, you've lengthened the distance from the end of the pitman arm to the ball joints on the steering linkage, and you need to adjust the drag link once you get the Jeep back home, and I'll show you how to do that. So don't drive it for very far after you get these warnings, just around the block, just to make sure that everything is settled in and your suspension settled down, and then take it back home and recenter your steering. To do this, you need to loosen the pinch bolt on the drag link and turn the adjuster in a proper direction to get the steering wheel to come back to center. It is helpful to have an assistant sit in the Jeep to let you know when you've reached the center point. Here are a few views of the completed installation, both front and back, and a before and after walk around. Note the gain in ground clearance and increased track width for a confident stance from the new height gain from the lift kit. Thanks again to Chris and the folks at Lift Kits for Less. You can order this kit directly from them for your JL. You'll find a link below. And here's a sneak peek of the suspension getting a workout.
Yep, come on up. As you come up, come passenger and roll right through it. Don't stop. Don't stop. Piece of cake, brother.
I hope you found this installation video helpful, and if you like what you saw here, please hit the subscribe button below for more awesome and spam-free content from 4Low Rocks. Thanks for watching and happy wheeling.